So this is an opportunity to not look at the screen. You can close your eyes. Or if you're not comfortable closing your eyes, just look away or look down. And so beginning by bringing your attention into your body, just a sense of just feeling yourself sitting. This is, this is how we become grounded, how we start ourselves to be present. Very simple, really. Almost too simple for our complicated minds. Just to feel yourself sitting. Oh, notice if there's any sensations that are very distinct, pleasant or unpleasant, if not judging those. And noticing the balance of the body, the alignment. You want to be sitting upright, where the weight of the body is being held by the spine and down through the spine. When we tip either forward, back, or to either side, we put pressure on the muscles and things start to get strained and uncomfortable. So just keeping alignment is a key element of finding comfort in this practice. Helps us to feel grounded as well, as we feel the weight being drawn to the earth. Notice any points of tension or tightness in the body. So might check in with the jaw, facial muscles, just to relax. Releasing the shoulders, softening the belly. Can you feel your body as a single object? Just feel the whole body. Seeing that within that single object, there are many different sensations, different points, different areas of the body. Our body is not just one thing. And then noticing now any sounds in your environment. Each of us is in a different place, might have different sounds or more silence. Again, very simple way of being present to listen. And then seeing if you can listen well, feeling your body. Well, these are the most obvious sense experiences as we're sitting with our eyes closed. The sensations in the body and the sounds. And then the subtle experience, the felt experience on the emotional or mood level, just checking in there. What are you feeling right now? It's not just the subtlety of feelings that makes it difficult to sense, but our resistance to actually feeling our emotions or our unfamiliarity with turning directly towards those states. But very often it's the mood, the underlying mood that's coloring our whole experience, coloring our thoughts, coloring our perception, our way of even understanding what we're experiencing, how we filter everything through that, whether it's a positive or a negative filter. So being with the feelings, with mood is really critical to not being swept away. Both positive and negative feelings, or maybe pleasant and unpleasant feelings, trigger thinking. And while the pleasant feelings and pleasant thoughts might be more attractive, they nonetheless do the same thing to the attention. They hijack the attention, take it away from the present moment, take it into the thought world. So now connecting with the breath to give yourself something very specific to focus on, not to grasp on to the breath, or not to try to push away anything else, but just to give you something that helps you to settle. The breath with its capacity to both energize and calm. The in-breath, the energizing, the out-breath, the calming. The in-breath, the opening, the out-breath, the letting go. We can think of the breath as the center of the meditative focus, with then the kind of periphery, the outer realm being the sensations in the body, the sounds, the mood. So we're not excluding those peripheral elements, especially if they called for our attention. If some strong sensation or sound or mood arises, we turn the attention there. Otherwise, we have the breath as a more neutral, rhythmic experience, the center. It's natural for thoughts to draw our attention away from the breath and from this present moment experience. When we become aware that we're thinking, we gently guide the attention back to the breath, back to the body. There's no sense of rejecting thoughts or being in conflict with them. We're just choosing during this time to let go. each time you come back to the breath, it can be an opportunity to settle even more. You'll often notice that when you realize you've been lost in thoughts, that you discover the body has gotten tense or some tightness has arisen somewhere. And so you release that. And with that physical release, there can come also sort of mental, emotional release as well. And again, a sense of really inhabiting the body. May our practice be of benefit to all beings. All right. Hmm. Yeah. Just another, I guess, word of acknowledgement of how difficult these times are for everyone in the world. I just think of that sometimes. That the Buddhists love to talk about how everything is interconnected, and and having a disease that affects all humans makes that really clear. Um, and and yeah, I mean that mentioning that article in the Times about the struggles, was a lot of it was about treatment centers and how they're trying to get along. Um, but yeah, I mean, uh, easy time to relapse. I mean, I think about someone who's actively drinking. I mean, why wouldn't you just binge at this point? So it really it takes a lot. This is what we're doing together here is just being together to remind ourselves. And to have support from each other and remind ourselves to not drink or use no matter what, or whatever your addiction is. And my daughter's been staying with us for a few weeks. She's leaving in a couple days, but and she's 22, and she drinks, and she drinks in this very strange way where she'll have a glass of wine, and then sometimes she doesn't even finish her glass of wine. I'm not sure what's wrong with her, but we're hoping she can get some help. But seriously, on New Year's Eve, like we ordered dinner from a local restaurant, and they gave us a bottle of champagne. Like they just gave it to us. I was like, what the hell? Um, and so my daughter had like and so the bottle of champagne sitting there. And normally I'm not around alcohol. And it seemed like a really natural thing to do to just have a glass of that champagne. And we were joking about, well, if I drink, it's kind of going to ruin my career. And then it was like, well, maybe I could do like the relapse book, that can be my coming back. You can sell anything in this. Uh, but it's really strange. There have only been a couple of moments that I can remember when I thought when it was like the alcohol was right there. And the last time I noticed that was when we were in Ireland 5 years ago, and we just ate in pubs every night. And after a while, Guinness just looked like soda. It just looked like what. Of course, you would just have a Guinness. It's like no. So interesting, because really I've been very fortunate that I've rarely felt tempted or had like a craving to drink in my 35 years. It's now 35 and a half, I would say. So there's that, just to acknowledge the, you know, addiction thing before I get into some, if I can, some teachings. And um, and so I've been working, for the people who are new, I've been working with my book One Breath at a Time, which probably most people are familiar with. This is the newer edition, the different cover. Um, and in step 6, and this is kind of the part of the book that I like the most, and that really influences both my teaching and my own practice the most. And there's 3 sections called Feeling Feelings. Um, and so we're at the beginning we're at the first Feeling Feelings, and that this part of the book kind of came about pretty much spontaneously as I was writing it, and it was my as I was kind of trying to address, first of all, what step 6 means. And for those who don't have it on the tip of their tongue, step 6 says we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And if we kind of put aside the God part, then it's something about being ready to let go, being ready to change. I guess, being ready to, I mean, have having defects removed, that language never made any sense to me because it implies that there is sort of this outside force that's reaching in, like a surgical, you know, um, removing it, the character defect tumor. You know, um, so I've always thought of it as really being about how do we let go? Just I kind of keep it very simple in that regard. How do we let go of the things that cause us suffering? I mean, that's kind of the core question, and it's a core question that the Buddha was addressing, and so it seems like a good one to take on. And well, let me let me start with the some of the reading because there's a lot I can sort of jump into, but I should go through this um, slowly because this is going to take a while. And when I say a while, I mean many classes. Uh, it's not going to be done today or probably even this month. For people who are just joining us, we did start on this back in March, and we're in step 6, so that gives you some idea of the pace we're moving here. Less than a step a month, but the way I look at it is there's no hurry. Uh, you know, if we can all be vaccinated by the time we finish the book, that'll be fine. Of course, there are other books we can if we run out of this book. In any case, um, so I'm just going to read some of the opening of Feeling Feelings, which is on page 142 if you're reading along. Before we can be ready to have our quote defects of character unquote removed, we must know what they are. When I first did step 6, I equated the defects with the inventory itself. Everything I did was my defective character. But recently, after writing another inventory, I realized I'd missed a part of the process. To see what needs to be removed, we need to examine the underlying patterns, the substrata of our emotional landscape. This is particularly true in meditation. So I think that even this opening needs a little bit of discussion. So as I've done in this book and in much of my teaching, there's this movement between Buddhism and the 12 steps and trying to kind of draw these parallels. And so, first talking about inventory and that if we're looking at, I mean, I don't even like this phrase, and I'm sure many of you don't either, defective character. But if we're looking at things that we need to let go of in regards to our addiction, that we need to see the underlying patterns. It's kind of a good phrase, the substrata of our emotional landscape. Um, and, and um, I'm stopping because there's a Buddhist sutta that I'm thinking of. There's a line in it about underlying tendencies the Buddha talks about. But before I go off on that, just to say so that my claim here is that if we're going to uh, you know change, that we're going to need to see more than just the sort of surface, the behavior or like the moods that show up, but really get at something, the underlying causes and energies and this underlying emotional landscape. And then I immediately, with this last sentence, kind of flip back into, and it's true in meditation. And so I'll just go on to the next paragraph because I think this explains it. In daily practice, it can be even tougher to let go of habitual thinking than it is on retreat. At times, I sit down on my meditation cushion only to realize 10 minutes later that I've essentially forgotten that I was planning to meditate. I never even started. I went through the physical motions of putting myself into the meditation posture, but never engaged my mind in following the breath or paying attention to the activities of mind and body. There's a willingness to practice, but no engagement. Why do I get so lost, and how can I find my way back? Oftentimes I discover that the reason I'm not able to get present in my meditation is that something else is going on in my psyche that I'm not acknowledging. So I'm hoping that other people relate to this problem. That you sit down to meditate and you thought you were going to meditate, and then you're like, wait, 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later, whenever, you realize, like, what was I going to do? If you don't relate, then I'm ashamed of myself for being the one person who this happens to. Um, So the next piece. Recently, a handsome young man with long blonde hair tied back in a ponytail approached me after a meditation class I'd been teaching. Brad had been sober for 3 years and practicing meditation for 9 months. I'd seen him several times and gotten the impression that he was very committed to his practice. I do an hour of loving kindness practice every morning, he told me, and an hour of Vipassana in the evening. I was impressed by his rigor. He told me that another teacher had recommended metta practice as a counter to what Brad called the voices in my head. These voices told him he wasn't worthy, that he didn't deserve love. But when he tried this, instead of metta quelling the voices, they only got louder. Using metta to counter negativity in the mind is a classical Buddhist teaching called replacing with the opposite. In this case, trying to arouse a feeling of love toward oneself to get rid of self-hatred. It's a tricky proposition. If there is enough mindfulness and concentration, it can work, so that the negativity subsides as the forces of kindness and compassion pervade the mind. However, if there isn't sufficient strength of mind, of mindfulness and concentration, this practice can backfire in the way that Brad was describing. Every time you try to bring in an element of metta, the fierce, destructive aspects of mind throw back more venom, and instead of reducing the strength of negative thoughts, you actually increase them as they feed off the weak efforts at positivity. So again, I wrote this because I thought that it was probably a very common thing. It's something I've certainly experienced. Like, oh, I'm going to do loving kindness. May I be happy? Oh, fuck you. You're not worth it. Deserve to be happy. May all beings be happy. Oh, screw them. So this kind of presents this challenge, right? And this is like where we're going with this. And I actually should try to get to a certain point today where I leave you with something positive. Yeah. I don't think we're going to get there. So I'm going to take a little side trip. I'm going to take a side trip into the sutta that where this suggestion of replacing with the opposite shows up. And this is, in this, this comes from the Visuddhimagga, and for those who are, I'm sorry, not the Visuddhimagga, the Majjhima Nikaya, and for those who are not familiar, I won't go into a lot of this, but the Majjhima Nikaya is the middle-length discourses of the Buddha, and this sutta is number 20. It's called The Removal of Distracting Thoughts, one of the most popular suttas. So, and it's in this language. I mean, if you think the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is difficult to read, this stuff, but this is, the Buddha is talking to monks who he calls bhikkhus, and they are all men. So the language is all, that manly. So I'm going to read a little bit of this to you. It says here, bhikkhus, when a bhikkhu is giving attention to some sign and owing to that sign, there arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion, then he should give attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome. When he gives attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion are abandoned in him and subside. And with the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. Just as a skilled carpenter or his apprentice might knock out, remove, and extract a coarse peg by means of a fine one, so too, when a bhikkhu gives attention to some other sign connected with this, what is wholesome, his mind becomes steadied. So, strange language. First of all, as I said, bhikkhu is a monk. So when he says giving attention to some sign, it's it's just, I don't know why they use that word, but it's just like something you're paying attention to. So but let me get at the heart of what he's saying, that if something, if a thought of either desire, hate, or delusion, you know, arises, then you turn your attention to something positive. It's very simple, really. You know, and so there are 5 methods in this sutta. We're not going to go through them all, uh, but each of them has a simile. Just as a skilled carpenter might knock out a coarse peg by means of a fine one. So if we can imagine this image, like you've got the peg would probably be holding together uh, in like a chair or something, and you've got this peg that's kind of coarse. It's not really shaped that well, doesn't really fit that well. And so you take a one that fits better, bang it in there, fits in smooth, right? So it's taking out the thing that doesn't fit, the thing that doesn't work, with something more refined. And as I say, this is a traditional practice, uh, and and Bhikkhu Bodhi, who did this translation, then has a note here in the back where he says, he describes the particular practices that should be applied to the different types of problems. So he says, when thoughts of sensual desire arise, directed toward other living beings, the other sign is the meditation on foulness. So this is for monks. If a monk is getting sexually aroused, he's encouraged to think about the sort of unpleasant aspects of the body, like bile, phlegm, blood, pus, all the thing in the different organs, as a way of, like, you're looking at a man or a woman that you find attractive, and you just start to think about what's like inside their body, like, so that's very traditional Buddhist practice, not popular in the West for some reason. I'm not sure why that's never caught on here. My suggestion is always just, if you're trying to quell your arousal, just look up the nose of the person that you find attractive, and that'll pretty much cool you off. But the way I relate this to addiction is that when we talk about recoiling as if from a hot flame, right? When we realize, oh, that bottle of champagne there, that's poison. That's, that's it. It looks attractive, and in my mind, it's attractive, but I know what it really is. So that to me is like the meditation on foulness for an addict. Is like, that's really. We've been watching The Sopranos again, and watching Christopher Moltisanti relapsing over and over is like, oh, it's just like foul. He's like shooting up. Okay. So when the thoughts are directed to, so if a thought of desire, if there's desire towards an inanimate object, you replace it with attention to impermanence. So, wow, I really want to get that car. If I got that new Tesla, man, it'd be so great. And then, it's gonna wear out, it's gonna get a scratch. And anyway, like, Next year when Porsche comes out with their new electric car, this thing's going to be old and obsolete. I don't know. I was reading about the new electric Porsches, but so it's a good one. Remembering impermanence, like, oh, I just want that so much, and just knowing, yeah, I'd have it, and then it'll get old. When thoughts of hate arise, directed toward living beings, the other sign is the meditation on loving kindness. So exactly what I'm describing with Brad. Um, I'll finish this. When the thought of hate is toward an inanimate object, the other sign is attention to the elements. That's it would take a while to get into that, but that's just like realizing that this thing that I hate is just made up of stuff, and everything is just made up of stuff of earth, air, fire, water. So why am I being bothered by it? And then for delusion, the remedy for thoughts connected with delusion is living under a teacher, studying the Dharma, inquiring into its meaning, listening to the Dharma, and inquiring into its causes. So there you go. The practice of replacing with the opposite, or just replacing. Um, and so as I'm describing here, I'm encountering this guy. I mentioned a while back that not all the stories in this book are factual. Some of them I made up. This is a real story. This was about a real person. His name was not Brad, um, but this event happened. And as I said, it's it's a beautiful practice. I think it's a wise practice, but there are limits to it. And the limit being, if your mind doesn't have enough focus, if you don't have enough mindfulness and concentration, when you try to do something like this, it it can either backfire in this way, or you can just, oh, I'm going to meditate on foulness, and your mind will be just off. It can just throw you off into a whole other thing. And a lot of the teachings in the suttas, especially when they're directed towards monks, there's an assumption that you're already pretty focused. And if you're pretty focused, you can do something like this, and boom, it'll be very effective. Even the practice of right effort, as it's described in the suttas, of abandoning the unwholesome and cultivating the positive, very similar to this. Again, if you're not very grounded, and you start trying to abandon or cultivate, it can turn into grasping or into aversion very easily. So so what I'm getting at in this section of the book, and I'll give you kind of a preview of it, is that sometimes we first need to really get grounded in what it is that's underneath that craving, or that aversion, or in Brad's case, the sense of unworthiness. We need to just get at the feeling and feel that feeling. If we go in there like, oh, I'm going to get rid of this, very often that's, this negativity, it's this aversion, it's this struggle, and we're creating a conflict. The people who developed mindfulness-based cognitive therapy talk about this, how when we see ourselves as flawed and we try to fix it or get rid of something, we're creating this internal conflict that's unresolvable. It's like me against me. Eckhart Tolle talks about this when he talks about the breakthrough that he had when he found himself saying to himself, "I hate myself," and then asked the question, "Well, who is hating whom? What does that mean? Are there two of me?" You know? And so we fall into this loop here. And so stripping our experience down, uh, and this is kind of how I try to guide the meditation, get you down to something really fundamental. What's going on? What are you feeling? What's your relationship to what you're feeling? A lot of the time, our relationship to what we're feeling is aversion, fear. We don't like it. We're and even more than not even liking it, or maybe even before not liking it, there's I'm afraid to look at it. And this is, the story for many addicts, right? We don't wanna feel it. We're afraid to feel it. We're afraid of what's there. We're afraid what we'll discover. We're afraid it's gonna be overwhelming, and maybe it has been overwhelming, right? Why did we become addicts? Probably a lot of us, um, you know, did were afraid or had feelings, were, crushed or traumatized by things at early points in our lives and shut down and used our addiction as a way of shutting down. So coming back into feeling is, this process. It's not something we want to jump into on day one. Better, you got to develop some groundedness in your recovery. Um, but um, but to really get to a point where our recovery is solid and sustainable, we need to develop a friendly relationship with our feelings, or at least, you know, a a truce with our feelings. Um, and so I just glanced over at the chat there. Always a risk when you're trying to teach, but yeah, I think there are a couple things I wouldn't mind addressing. Um, Particularly, how can we feel the feeling? How do we do this safely and not get stuck? And that is what I'm trying to get at when I guide the meditation, when I ask you to first get into your body. So if and I know that's not safe for everybody. For people who have trauma, that's has not really been healed, you know, but this is kind of the starting point. So I'm not a trauma expert, so I'm just going to assume that you're able to be in your body. And then, as I say, I just bring in the senses. Oh, I'm sitting here in my body. It's just this. Oh, and there's sounds here. Okay, it's just that. And then I just ask myself, well, what's my mood? How am I feeling? And that's more subtle, but it's perceivable in the same way that we can hear sounds and that we can feel sensations. And so it's something we have to uh, start to just ask that question and kind of probe it. It's really like, what's it like? I mean, in a way, it's like learning to feel the breath. And maybe that's too simplistic, but when you first learn to meditate, if somebody you're trying to meditate with the breath, at first it's like the breath. What am I supposed to feel? And then it's like, is that all there is? Just that? And then you realize, oh, when my mind's a little clearer, I can really feel my breath. And then other times I can't really feel the details of it, but I can feel that it's, filling up and letting out. I can feel that. So it's turning our attention to something that ordinarily we just don't pay attention to. Um, but fundamentally, I would say that feeling our feelings starts in the body. And this is something that's, uh, I don't, feelings seem to be, I will say, the feelings I'm talking about, these emotional feelings, are in the body, and yet they aren't wholly in the body. I'm not sure how. I think that I'm not sure I can characterize them more carefully than that. But it's it starts with, oh yeah, I can feel a churning here. I feel a tension here. I feel a tightness here. And typically, yeah, the chest and the belly as part of the torso is kind of the main place they're felt. But then you realize, oh, sometimes when I'm excited, there's like streams of energy up the back. You know, you'll feel tingling here or there. And so you start to realize, oh, okay, there's these feelings. But the thing is, along with those kind of seemingly physical feelings, there's also this mood which is coloring how we're thinking. And you kind of, you start to recognize, if you watch your mind a lot, you start to realize, oh, like I'm having those negative thoughts right now. Oh, those are the negative thoughts when I'm having this kind of feeling. Or I'm having those really happy thoughts right now. And oh, I have kind of a happy feeling. And you start to realize it's this whole package, right? And the danger of it is that when it whatever it is, especially if it's strong, we buy into it, we believe it. We think, "Oh, here it is, information. The world sucks," or "The world is great," or "I suck," or "I'm great," or whatever. And those are examples. It could be many other things. But because there's this physical, mental, emotional experience, it becomes a kind of bubble that we're inside. And it's this belief system. Well, this is who I am. This is what's happening. This is true. It's true. I know it's true because I can feel it, and logically I can see it because you can prove anything with logic. Like whatever your mood is, you can just prove it. Like that's what lawyers or professionals are doing, right? You just, oh yeah, there's a logic, and I feel it, and I see it, and the world, and all I have to do is like pick up the paper, and there it is. There's the proof. The world's horrible. Or turn to the style section. Hey, the world is great. Everything's happy. You just sort of you start to look for things that prove your belief system, right? I mean, this is here how conspiracy theories happen, right? The whole how we're going into bias and all that. So it's a process, right? It really, but it starts with just what am I feeling right now? And you might not even feel what you're feeling, but you'll know it. Be like, well, I'm feeling depressed or feeling excited. And how do I know that? I don't know how I know it, right? You don't, at first you won't really know, but after a while you start to catch the markers. So this is where maybe that word, the sign from the sutta kind of is a good one. You'll start to notice the signs of your mind states, of your moods, of your feelings. And then it becomes possible to not be completely dominated by them because you realize, oh, it's a feeling. It's impermanent. Maybe I should cultivate something positive, you know. Uh, maybe, I should turn my mind somewhere else. One of the other suggestions in that sutta, just don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to this. So this is, the beginning of this work. Um, and I, I I hope that's helpful. I encourage you all, if you haven't been doing this work around feelings, to start doing it. If you have one breath at a time, you might want to read ahead. I I do think this chapter is worth going through. It's I think it's kind of interesting the way it plays out in the book, taking us through these different sort of elements of the process. So I've run over time. I appreciate Angela has put in a bunch of information in here. Um, yeah, we've been recording these, so all the ones that we've recorded are on my YouTube channel, which you can get to through my website, or you can find it on YouTube anyway. Um, and yes, I am not charging for these classes, but people are welcome, and I could even say encouraged to offer Dana if you want through Venmo or PayPal. It's great. Thank you all for coming. Yeah, let's just do a little metta to close. I even saw in the football game the other day that they had a prayer for people who have passed away. So if they can do it at a football game, maybe we can do it here. So just a moment to reflect on those who have, both those who have died and those who have been harmed, and those who have loved ones have been harmed through this disease, through COVID-19. Just another disease, but one particularly universal and pernicious. So may we all be safe, and may all beings be safe. May we live together in harmony and love, letting go of delusion and hatred, and greed. May all beings be free from suffering. Thank you all. As we said, Friday night is a Spirit Rock class. It starts at 7:15. And then I'll be back here next Tuesday as well. And so feel free to unmute and say goodbye if you like.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Kevin.
All right.